Welcome to this edition of Hess World Podcast. I'm delighted today to have as my guest Mark Skelton. Mark is probably one of the best CTOs that I've worked with in my life, but Mark's no longer a CTO. He's now MD, CEO of the digital part of Node 4, which is backed by private equity company Providence. So Mark's gone from CTO to a general management role. As I said, he's pretty damn outstanding CTO that I've worked with. So today I want to explore that journey from technical to general management. I want to explore the relationship between technical roles and sales roles in IT. I'd like to reflect on how technology's changed in Mark's career and Mark's lifespan than mine. I think it's fair to say we're probably just about a generation apart. And I'd also like to explore a subject that probably isn't particularly well explored, which is the changing role of dads, being a dad in business, and how that's different now than it was in my day when my children were younger. So lots to talk about today in the Hess World Podcast. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'll call you Skelts because I know you as Skelts. Welcome, Skelts.
Thank you, Martin. Well, first of all, thank you for that very flattering intro. It's very, obviously made me blush a little bit, but thank you for that. So it's great to be here.
So I met you when I joined OCSL, which I don't know, probably about 9-10 years ago. You weren't on the OCSL board. In fact, you were a very good technical pre-sales. Do we call it?
Well, I was doing I guess I was doing a bit of pre-sales and then running what was the professional services arm. It was still very small in OCSL days then because it was very much a hardware reseller still in terms of culture of the business. Yeah. But I guess when we first met, I was running that small pocket of professional services, but mostly doing pre-sales. Yeah,
and I spotted the talent that was Mark Skelton, and anyway, you ended up running the services organisation, then promoted you to CTO on the board. We were bought by Cancom, we bought some other companies, so the business grew.
Yep.
And when we sold Cancom to Telefonica, I have to say you were very much my right-hand man in selling the business. And it was really through that experience that I had at probably more Cancom than OCSL, I realised the value of an outstanding CTO because you definitely helped me sell the business. And thereafter, we identified how we wanted to change Cancom and make it even more relevant. And we identified the acquisition targets, didn't we? And then we went on and bought business apps company and a data company. And then you flew the nest, I flew the nest, and you ended up working for Node 4 and loads of acquisitions, I think, and you run the digital business there. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So it's exactly what I'm doing today. So I was brought in, and one of the reasons I was attracted to this new role within Node 4 is obviously a lot of acquisitions were made in the right areas for me. So a lot of my career has been based in and around sort of the Microsoft services world, which is another reason I was brought into OCSL back in the day, was that capability and experience. But I've been brought in just with that wealth of knowledge in and around Microsoft and how to, I guess, lead Microsoft-based businesses. And the big job I've been doing is in and around integration, learning from those experiences, those really fun experiences, I think. I always look very fondly on those OCSL Cancom days as probably one of the highlights of my career in terms of companies to work for. Great fun, great energy, great leadership in yourself, which learned a lot from over the years. Time for me to embarrass you back a little bit, but great set of experience learned from how we buy businesses, how we integrate businesses, and I guess I'm taking that forward now to my current place. Doing it on a slightly bigger scale now, but still the same fundamentals of how you bring a business together. But keep that energy, that culture within an organisation, which I think is really important.
So a hell of a career journey. In the space of less than 10 years. Very, very impressive. Before we go further around that, where did you grow up?
So I was Surrey boy, born and bred, and deviated into London for a little bit through my early starts of my career. But
which bit of Surrey?
So Bagshot, Windlesham, if anyone knows that kind of area. So quite an affluent area, quite, I guess, privileged in terms of the areas that I was brought up in and background. Good schools, and went down to Pompey, Portsmouth for university, where, funnily enough, through my school career, started my interest in technology, but actually failed a lot of it, if I'm really honest. Didn't connect well with the education system back then in terms of around how they led tech. It was, I guess, a sign of the times. The education was not great around that, but still went on to do computer science through university. And I guess the big change in my sort of outlook was I did what they called a sandwich year in my university studies. So I did a year out in industry. And that's where my eyes lit up to what the art of the possible is. The education.
Where did you work? Where was your year
So I did a year with a company called Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical business. Just worked with a fantastic team that just gave me some freedom. And I learned how to code. I learned how to apply that, looking back on it, early days of things like automation that we talk about a lot now. But I was writing scripts to build servers and all that kind of stuff, very basic stuff back in that day because I was very early in my career. But that just gave me the buzz for it.
You're a gadget techie as well, isn't it? Because you like gadgets as well. I mean, I'm not saying that's where you play, because I think you're very much you can play much further up the value stack. But you're also a gadget techie.
It's a natural interest. Yes, my wife crucifies me for it, but every gadget you can buy, I will apply to home. I'm one of those people that automates everything at home. Not that it works half the time, but still do it, try it, dabble with it all the time. So it's a big part. It's just part of who I am, I guess.
I remember when you were CTO and obviously senior roles. I mean, it was if the AV equipment that wasn't working in a meeting, you'd be the person that sorted it out. So
Still am today. Tech support for any of those meetings where we all have that experience. Walk in a meeting room and it doesn't quite work, and I've just got a natural interest in that side of things, so you always like to fix things. So.
And then you were at Avanade, I think, weren't you, before you came to OCSL?
Yeah, so I came out of that university phase, and like any student at that point in time, wasn't really clear on where I wanted to take my career. I was probably a little bit lazy back then as well, so came out of university with no real plan, and then parents kicked me into life, said, "All right, get out. You got to get on and do, and get going with your career." And by chance applied at the London Stock Exchange at the time, underneath the Accenture banner. Went for an interview and just had a massive lucky break with a chap called James Hutchins, who interviewed me at the time, who always looked back very fondly, took a big risk on me, and managed to get into the Accenture machine outside of a graduate program. And I didn't know at the time, but the best thing that could have happened to me.
James Hutchins, you spotted talent. Well done, James.
I haven't spoken to him for years, and I hope he's doing well if he's listening. But I just got an opportunity to go into a very high-pressured environment, and at that age, you're just a sponge, and you learn incredibly fast. And I was put into some very, very difficult situations. You can imagine supporting trading platforms for the stock exchange is quite a hard thing to do. High pressure, when that goes down, how to deal with pressure, I guess. And I've just taken that learning, coupled with the fact that then you had the Accenture machine pushing you through change programs, and I progressed really, really quickly through that. It all went a bit sour when Accenture lost the contract with the stock exchange, and that's what ultimately forced me out, and that's where I ended up going into Avanade, which is another great company. Learned, and this is probably a history, kind of a path I've trodden. I've been very lucky in roles where I've been allowed to grow very quickly in organisations. And I guess the big turning point in my career was when I took a phone call one day. I was in Avanade. I remember it because I was working on the Shell project at the time. Just walked out of a big project meeting. I took a phone call from a recruiter saying about a role for a company I'd never heard of, called OCSL at the time. And something intrigued me about them wanting to build a Microsoft capability, Microsoft practice. And it was, it wasn't a money thing. It was actually the opportunity to go and build something within a company. And I took a massive punt. I remember driving to OCSL that day.
OCSL in deepest, darkest Sussex.
Yeah, and I remember driving down there thinking, what the hell am I doing at that point? Yeah. I'm coming out of these big city roles in a big company where I thought that was my path, my trajectory. I was doing well in those big sort of consulting businesses. and took a risk on a little.
What were you doing? I mean, what was
I don't know
what
at
was
the time. I was drinking something that day, or so. I don't know what happened, but I took and when I went down there and I met the owners, Tim and Neil Thrower, and a chap called Ian Mobley, who look at very fondly, helped me in my career at that point in time.
You liked all the Aston Martins and Maseratis in the car park. I mean, that's what really seduced you, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I remember driving into the car park thinking completely out of place in my little Golf at the time, driving into that. But it was just a different world. I'd never seen that smaller, hardware-driven VAR kind of experience, and the fun that was in that business kind of attracted me. It was completely different to that corporate culture.
To Tim, he created a fantastic, a fantastic culture. And yes, back then, you're joining OCSL in your late 20s. Mm-hmm. Did you have a plan to become, the MD of a business that's doing a few hundred million revenue now, and I don't know how many people.
So in my bit, roughly 600 people.
Did you have a plan back then that this is what you wanted to do? I mean,
I wouldn't say I had a structured plan in my head. I think I've always been quietly ambitious. I'm not one of these people that is outwardly ambitious.
You don't wear it on your sleeve, do you?
No, not at all. But I'm always pushing myself. I'm always trying to challenge myself. I love learning. I love pushing my boundaries of where I feel comfortable. And I guess this is one of the factors in my career that's always pushed me on. I've always thought, I can do that. When opportunities have arisen, I've definitely put myself in the firing line for those. And I think that's the recipe for the success that I've had so far, is just being that prepared to take a risk and a punt and back myself on it. But never outwardly push some of this stuff. And I've also been very fortunate, I guess, with the rise of a technologist in the importance in our industry. I've ridden that wave. I've ridden the Microsoft wave very well as well. So I've been a bit fortunate with some of those kind of outside factors.
Yeah. Let's talk about that one for a minute. That's an interesting one. The technologist wave.
Yeah.
Are you saying that you think do you think the industry swung around to be a better place for techies than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago?
110%. I think the industry shifted. I think if you multiple lenses. If you look at the sales lens, which is I've spent a lot of my career working very closely with sales. I wouldn't class myself as a seller, but very in that realm. I think sales has moved much more to a technical sale certainly over the last 5-6 years. I think technical people have brought in very early now into the sales cycle, and the reason for that, I think customers are much more educated these days in terms of what the what's out there, and that they're kind of consciously made a decision on some of this stuff before a seller goes into the room. So really what they're looking for is, can you as a company provide capability to deploy or implement that? Have you got the experience? And they get that from some of the technologists that can talk the language in the right way. Does that make sense?
I'd agree with you, actually, because if I look when I started, I think it was 1982. I'd say there was asymmetry between, I started with ICO, then IBM. I'd say there was asymmetry between knowledge of client and knowledge of say, an IBM. So I felt I turned up. I wouldn't say I was a techie, but I did a lot of technical training, and believe it or not, I did spend a time in pre-sales. But I'd say as a supplier, we knew more about computers or computing as it was than the customer. A lot of people then sort of stumbled into being an IT manager or a data processing manager, and they were still learning. So I think relative power actually was with the supplier, but I totally agree with you. I think that shifted, and I think on the client side, they know a lot and arguably know more. And then obviously with the internet, their ability to learn and research is that much greater. So therefore, as a vendor, you've got to show up. You can't just basically show up and know nothing anymore. So I agree with you. I do think sales has had to be more technical, and the seller that turns up and basically just sort of says, "Well, I'm not technical." I don't think. Well, what value are you adding?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the best sellers I've seen, certainly in the last 10 years of my career, are the ones that are have that ability to go into the technical detail. One of your previous guests, Anuj Mawaha, who's been on here, one of the best sellers I've ever seen in my time.
We can't keep building his ego.
No, but he's excellent. But what he's very good at is, and I think you talk about this in your podcast with him, is he's rooted by technology behind it. He can go into that level of discussion with a client, as well as obviously doing the great job around the selling side of things. So I think it's an important factor in the modern way that we interact with customers, clients, having that capability. And I think that going back to your point around the technical community, I think this is where it's been elevated up in terms of importance.
Because I'd say technical, somebody came with your technical background, technical role, and then became an MD CEO.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that's an overly well-trodden path, to be honest.
No,
so
well, you talk about it in before. It's normal trend is for a sort of a more sales-focused person to go into those leadership roles. And I guess, again, it's me probably pushing myself a little bit. It's not a comfortable path. It's a very different path for a technical person to become a leader across the type of organisation that I'm leading today. But again, what's driven me that route is that pushing my boundaries. What additional skills can I build in, understanding all the finance aspects of a business, as well as understanding how to be a leader. And it's not a natural thing for a technical person sometimes.
I think that, what I know of you, Skels, I think you've always pushed the barrier you've never been a big I am, or you've never been a big overly ambitious. And I don't think you've been on the surface anyway, particularly materialistic or money driven. I mean, in the times you worked for me, I can't remember you having those sort of conversations. I think I gave you pay rises before you even asked for them.
Yeah,
because that's because you were bloody good. I mean, so how important is money in the whole scale of things for you?
I think anyone would be lying saying money's not important. I think it is a factor. I think I've always taken the stance: you work hard, you do your job really well, and if you've got good leadership management around you, you get paid for what you're worth. And I've been fortunate in roles to see the benefit of that. I've never really had to push that side of things. But I wouldn't say I'm driven by money. I'm more driven by, am I working in an exciting area? Are we doing the right tech things? I think, because I'm a technologist at heart, so are we doing exciting technology? Are we creating the right stories for our customers? I'm very customer centric. So I get excited when we're changing or transforming a customer through the technology set we're deploying. That gets me going. Plus the culture of a business. I talk about this quite a lot at the moment in terms of how I run the business, but having a great fun environment to work in is what keeps me going. Working with people that create energy around you is really important.
Yeah, just picking up a couple of those things. I'd say you are one of the most customer centric people I've worked with. I remember you were taking customer calls. There was one particular, we won't go into the gory details, but we had a particular issue within our managed services business, which and you were taking probably, what was it, I guess a second level or third level call when you were pushing your trolley around Tesco on a Saturday morning.
Correct.
And all the top sellers, you mentioned Anuj and a few other, all the sellers wanted to take Mark Skelton to their customer. You were the bit of magic, I think, and it sort of reinforces what you say about the impact of outstanding customer-centric technical ability in winning deals. So not only were you great post-sales, you were great pre-sales. So I've got to tone it down because I'm going to make your head get too big.
Yes.
I put you along. So I've been on a journey to understand, the real value of a CTO. So if I think about before I met you, the best CTO I'd worked with was a guy called Dave Chalmers. So Dave, hope you're alive and well. I knew Dave in a company called Sequent. He was brilliant. He was a brilliant technology storyteller. And then I brought him into HP, and he was great because I found not enough people whether they're in sales or pre-sales, could tell a technology story and make it relevant to the client and make it interesting. He was brilliant at that. And then I think he ended up at Amazon and I don't know what, I mean, Dave's probably enjoying a happy retirement, but I think you were the one after that I thought,
well, thank you for saying. And I think just picking up one word you said there, that relevance piece. I think this is the art of a good CTO, is being able to take the jargon of tech, and that can be very confusing for a lot of our customers and clients, and interpret it into something that they connect with. And understanding how that tech can be revolutionary for them. So understanding what their business is, regardless of what they make. It might be a retailer, for example. So how is this technology going to make them sell more or enable them to operate differently? And I think that's the magic sauce there, is understanding the customer lens, but also then understanding the jargon on the other side and being that kind of interface and making it relevant. And I think that's the art to it. And technologists that can think that way are the ones that step up into those CTO roles over time, in my opinion.
What did you ever think about being a seller, or what you called in my day a salesman? Sorry.
No, I think that's never. It's not an easy gig. I think everyone thinks sales is easy, and I've seen it enough in my career. It's not as experienced as yours, but I see it enough to say it's a hard life, right? It's one thing I've never wanted is the numbers and the pressure on my head that comes with that sales piece, and I've never put myself in that camp being a person driven by that. I love the art of selling. I love getting in front of customers and talking about what we can do, but it's that pressure of that you get.
It's a really good point you make there, because I've come across many people in technical roles, pre-sales roles, as we used to call them, who thought, well, that selling game looks easy, and then you basically put this bloody great quota or target around their shoulders, and now you're the person who has to go and make it happen. You're the rainmaker. You're the orchestra conductor, and they don't hack it.
No.
Because it looks easy, and when they do it, no, it's because a lot of it is, a lot of the great selling is unseen as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all that relationship building. It's for me,
drive to an outcome.
Yeah.
And basically moving the pieces to drive in that enterprise B2B world, moving the various chess pieces till you get to checkmate.
Yeah.
And it's not just one call. It's just not one event.
It's nurturing over. It's very easy for someone like me to turn up to a meeting that's preset, talking about a particular thing. That's the easy bit. But there's a whole bunch of activity that happens to get that meeting in place, which, I'm never going to be skilled at doing, whether it's starting from a cold call to a customer, building that relationship, building that trust, all of those things. And that's the art of a good seller, building that relationship. And then, like you say, post that meeting, driving it to a close and making sure that thing happens.
In many respects, you're a performer, aren't you? I mean, you're a technical performer. Yeah. You'd perform in those one-on-ones, and when we had kickoffs, you'd want to be on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You liked the platform, didn't you? I mean, and I can identify that. I liked it myself, but I thought so. You, in many respects, are the best of all worlds in that you turned up, did your thing, and then left again.
Yeah. No, again, it's about pushing boundaries. It's funny looking back at my early parts of my career. I was very introverted, very shy. Would never push myself to do those things. And quite often, when I talk to my parents now about what I do, and when they see social media posts go out of me talking at big events and those types of things, they're shocked about what I'm doing. But it's pushing your boundaries, pushing that comfort zone, and now actually get a kick out of going and doing these things and quite enjoy it, if I'm honest. It's you get a good buzz. The feeling of walking off stage when you've done something like that it's immense.
Well, yeah. I was and I think you told me that actually it was that process of selling the business and opening your eyes. Well, not opening it. Well, maybe it was opening your eyes to, that really thought, hey, I can do this. Yeah.
I think when you go through selling, you get exposed to well, one thing I learned a lot was more the finance aspect of businesses.
Yeah.
You know, when through my career, obviously rooted by technology and the mechanics of inside the organisation, but never really exposed to the finance and the investment side and what the art of the possible is with, you know, private equity wealth and all those types of things and how they bring money into. And that's, you know, when we did the Cancom to Telefonica sale, that really opened my eyes up to it, and I definitely got a bit of a buzz from that and looking at what you could do. And the whole M&A process is quite exciting. How can you create value for businesses and things like that, which is ultimately why I've stepped out and, you know, of that corporate world, which ultimately what Telefonica Tech became, and then into something, you know, where private equity, it's a fast-paced business, it's constantly changing, challenging.
Well, they're constantly looking for value, sources of value, aren't they? Correct. That's the thing. I mean, though we sold to Telefonica, we very nearly, I think this is public domain, I don't think I'm revealing anything, we very nearly sold to Providence Node 4, where you are now.
Yep.
And I think it's fair to say that you did such a good job that they fell in love with you, and they spent a good year after they missed out on buying Cancom. They spent a year or so tracking you down, and
we kept in contact
and trying to hide. But that's because you did a great job selling the business. But I agree with you that, you know, if I look at, you know, my time since leaving HP, I have learnt so much about the world of building a business, getting it ready for exit, looking at sources of value, making sure that it's a big sales campaign at the end of the day. Selling a business is a big sales campaign. The thing is, you've got to make sure you're in what I call the business gym for several months, maybe even a few years, before you basically, you know, mixing my metaphors here, finally get on the stage and start to do your tap dancing in the beauty contest. And then, you know, tailoring the pitch to the different audiences and what they're looking for. I loved it as well, and understanding, as I say, those sources of values and what's of value to a potential buyer. So you got the same kick as I did.
Yeah, I got the same kick, and also I would say I love the idea of buying businesses as well, and having that, because it forces you to think again to that value creation piece and thinking 2-3 years down the line, where is the industry, where's the world going to go? And I think I equally get a massive kick out of that buying process. Selling is you get the euphoria when you close a sale is like nothing you've ever experienced.
I agree with you as well.
But that looking at where's the next investment area. We made a strategic direction change to go into data and into the Microsoft Business Applications arena when we're in Cancom, which have proven to be right. Those two areas are massively booming now, and it's things like that I get a kick out of as a technologist.
I think we did a good. Pat ourselves on the back. Well, we saw that the actual what were the big growth drivers of the previous 5 years weren't going to be the big growth drivers going forward. So we had to basically, you could organically grow, it would have taken too long and there was nothing to grow it from. So we had to go out and acquire. And I think I agree with you. It's how you shape a business so that, particularly in tech, it stays relevant, because the relevancy of a tech company can change within a very short period of time. But you mentioned that you're working on integration, and that's the grubby side and the hard side of M&A, which often doesn't get done and doesn't get done properly, does it?
I would say it's very underestimated when companies buy other companies. That integration is incredibly difficult. There's some elements that are relatively straightforward. If you talk about technical integration and organizational designs and those types of things, you can do those things relatively straightforwardly. But the biggest challenge is identifying cultural differences between businesses, and making businesses work culturally together is a big task, and I think overlooked in a lot of M&A activity.
Totally agree with you, Skelton. Totally agree. And in the sort of size of businesses that we've been involved in, the culture all culture flows from the top, but it particularly flows from the top in those businesses, because you often had first generation leader or second generation leader still running those, and it's very much the culture of them and how they see the world and how they see business, isn't it? And Yeah, and it's a real hard one. But I also think some of the plumbing's not easy, is it? I mean, finance systems, CRMs. You probably think they are straightforward, but it's quite often it's. Yeah, I suppose we learnt the hard way, didn't we, in our old world?
Yeah, and that's again. That's you do learn as you go, and I think you do get better and better, and that's probably why I've trivialised it a little bit in my head, because in my head now I've built up a blueprint of things and steps and things that you look out for and how you go about doing it. But it's learnt through years now of doing things the hard way and probably not having the most perfect ways of doing it and dealing with all the challenges.
I don't believe that I think everything depends on context. So you can't have a cookie cutter approach to acquiring companies and what you do. But if I've got, generally speaking, when you acquire, I believe you can make quicker progress if the old management don't hang around for too long.
Correct.
And, that's not to say they weren't very good, but generally speaking, when you acquire, that management, they've got egos. Quite often they haven't reported to anybody because they've been the bosses, and quite often they look backwards and they might be resistant to change.
Yep.
And also their worldview changes when they get a few quid in their bank account. So generally speaking, after say 3 or 6 months, move on, let them go, rather than hold on to them, because and bring in a new generation of leaders to take the business forward. I mean, would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree. I've done both through my career. You leave them in for long. It causes challenges over time. Because I think one of the things that when you buy a business, I think that change is expected. So it's often easier to make big, significant changes like exiting founders very, very early on. But over time, I think change becomes harder to do. So if you leave it a year, 2 years down the line, it becomes incredibly difficult. So I've always been a fan of waiting at the beginning, because you can set your stall out. This is what you want the business to become. And exiting a founder or a senior leader in that business early on is absolutely the right thing to do, in my opinion, if your intention is to fully integrate that business into your wider organisation, because it's expected at that point. You leave it long, people then go, well, I'm still operating the same way that I've always operated because the founder's still there. They may still be reporting into someone else, but it's still culturally their business.
And then you've got that conflict between earnout and integration, and the enemy of integration is earnout, because you got to keep the business separate. I generally speaking don't like earnouts. I'd prefer a milestone payment and then off you go, because then we can get on and integrate. Because the earnouts that go too long, you really struggle to obviously integrate because you can't measure. So it's I'd have struggled to have this conversation probably 10, 15 years ago. I was part of companies that acquired or were acquired, but never at the front end, and it is the same for you. Yeah,
it's exciting though. I think it's challenging, but it's a norm in our industry now. Acquisitions, I still think it's going to get faster.
Well, you need to adapt quickly, don't you? And if you and it's very hard to adapt quickly organically. I think that's the thing. I mean, if you look at companies like Accenture, when they spot and I call it a fashion trend, which might trivialize it a bit, but we are a fashion-driven industry. If I think about what Accenture did when this thing called digital transformation appeared on the scene in sort of 11, 12, 13, the rapidity with which they bought companies to quickly acquire capability was phenomenal.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
And we've got a new wave of that coming with the whole AI boom.
Whole AI boom.
Small businesses betting their lives on AI with the ambition of getting acquired down the line. It's just the next evolution of that digital transformation.
Let's come on to that in a minute. I'll tell you what, slightly change the subject, which is very left field. It's fatherhood in a professional world, because there's obviously a lot of discussion about being a mum and and holding down a job and having your career. How do you do the two as a woman? But I'm interested just to spend a few minutes on becoming a dad. I know you worked hard with Sarah to basically start a family. It wasn't easy, and you became a dad in your late 30s. I want to just, what impact do you think that's had on you doing a really demanding job as a dad?
It's certainly not been easy. I mean, I'll be very open. We tried for a long time to have children, so we're desperate to have children. It was a really important part in my personal life and my wife's personal life to have children. But to go through all of that and maintain the high pressured environment that I've put myself in at work is hard. It's not an easy thing. And I think parenting from a male's perspective has changed over the years. I think, I certainly want to be very much involved in my children's lives. I want to be doing school pickups and drop-offs and things. And I think it's important we do, because especially my wife is career driven as well and has a job her side to manage. So it's right that we have the balance, but it's not easy. When you have to pick your children up after they're at nursery at the moment. They're 3 and 6, 7 months, so still very young. My children, but to ensure that you get back for those times and things like that. Now, the way that we work today has helped some of that. The ability to work on the mobile and things like that do help those situations. But it's
technology's definitely helped providing that balance, because you can have a high-powered job and technology has helped you be a lot. I think drive a much better work-life balance, isn't it?
It has, but the two worlds do collide, and I think one of the challenges for it is when do you switch off from one and do the other, and you can't. My life kind of goes in and out of being dad 1 minute, then being business the next minute, and the lines are blurred. I finish work, go pick up my children, go make sure I spend time with them, get them to bed, then switch back on at work, and so the lines are blurring between the two when you don't have a 9 to 5 position anymore. In my opinion, it's just constantly blurred in and out, which gives you that flexibility, allows you to be around, but that is a challenge mentally to manage it.
You're always, I've worked out, I think I'm 23 years older than you. So you could almost call that a generational difference. I think in the span of that generation, of that time, I think the role of dads has changed probably as much. Has it changed as much as women? Yeah, maybe it has actually. If I think about, I've got 3 children all in their 30s now. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I basically picked them up from school. I was, partly because I was driven, but I basically had to go to work. Mm-hmm. Technology wasn't there to work from home, and no paternity leave. It sounds like I'm having a moan. I'm not really, but I'm not at all. Yeah. And that. So I think there's it is better, isn't it? It is. It is a better world.
I think it's a better world. I think what our wives have to go through with children is incredibly tough. And I think it's, especially through those first few years, it's really, really hard, especially if they work at the same time. And I think it's important to have balance. And I think, the role of the dad is to be around a lot more than it used to be. I'm not saying it was wrong of old. That's just the way it was culturally. And I think now is a much better environment. Plus, I want to be there for my daughter and my son. I love I think it's a great way to switch off from the high-pressured work that I do, is to spend time with my daughter and talk about unicorns and rainbows or whatever she wants to talk about today, being a 3-year-old. But but it allows you. It does allow you to switch.
Unicorn, as opposed to business unicorns. Yeah.
But it's just it allows you to that switch off moment. And I think for mental health in these high-pressured roles, it's important to have that release of away from work and break it up.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've got, I love children, and I've got little grandchildren now, and they're the child in me basically, which has never been that far below the surface at times, comes out. But it is that grounding's really, really important. So what looking at basically what's important for you in business. Everyone, making money. Yeah, I get that. But what's important to you in terms of you're leading a business now? What are the things that you value? What are the things that you want to see flow down through your organisation?
It'll clearly make. I mean, especially in private equity world, money and numbers are king. But I firmly believe that if you're creating the right culture, and I've used this a lot through this podcast, but culture within a business, the money and the performance of the business is a byproduct of a high performing culture of business. You need to be professional. You need to be driven. You need to be making sure that you're playing into the right areas and having the right innovation, product development. So you're selling and developing the right things. But most importantly for me is that kind of, I call it the fun culture within a business. And actually, Martin, this is one of the things I learned, very strongly from you, is there's a fine line between that driving the right professionalism and corporate-y kind of direction of the business, but having fun with it and breeding that through the business. Because you spend a bulk load of your time working, and it's important that you enjoy the environment you're working in. That's, I think, the most important thing for me at the moment. Certainly in the organisation at the moment, one thing I'm trying to drive is that ability to have a smile on your face and have a bit of fun, not being too corporate. There's a fine line with some of these things, of course, but that is an important beating heart of a business today, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, and humour. I mean, I've always put a lot of importance on humour. Yeah, I mean, winning business, serving your customers, are obviously, where it actually flows from. I've always basically tried to keep a fun environment. So, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but you spend a lot of your time in that working environment. I think it's important as well in this world of working from home that you do actually get together face to face. In the office, both in terms of work and in terms of the social dimension to that as well.
It's a huge debate, isn't it, at the moment? Do you drive a work from office policy in your business? I don't agree with driving it through a policy. I think that sets the wrong tone for a business. But I'm a firm believer. You create relationships, you create better connections being together. So, I mean, one of the things I always encourage is you do your team meetings face to face if you've got them scheduled in your diary. Those types of things. It's important that you create that bond and environment. And I just think you have much better conversations. Technology, don't get me wrong, is incredible in terms of keeping in contact on certain topics, and it has allowed a lot more flexibility to working environments. But that having offices where you can come together and collaborate and work together is vitally important. That's the way we behave as humans. That's the way we get more out of things.
Totally agree. Let's we haven't talked much about this thing called AI yet, which is which is obviously hot and relevant. I'm interested in your thoughts as a CTO as to let's cast our mind, next generation of AI beyond ChatGPT and et cetera. A lot of people say there are those that say it's the biggest and most impactful of all. What's your view?
I think there's it's like with any technology wave, right? So there's a lot of hype. And I think we're in this hype cycle at the moment. Don't get me wrong, this is the next wave of transformation for our industry and beyond, I would say. Just, consumer life and business life will change through what AI could do for us. But I think we're in this phase of building foundational capability around it. We've not yet tackled the sort of compliance and policy and governmental challenges around some of this stuff, which is a big blocker to true AI enablement. We also, I think it's got too weighted towards productivity side of things at the moment, which
Yeah.
is really hard to demonstrate return on investment and all those things. So businesses are challenged with the cost of that productivity gains of AI at the moment. But where this could go is astronomical. You know, especially when we talk about things like agentive AI and building automation capabilities off the back of AI, that is
Put some colour on that, Skelts.
The way I describe agentive AI is the human replacement capabilities within AI. Can AI do a job that a human does today? So if I talk about a manufacturing process, taking raw ingredients all the way through to distribution to wherever it may be, a building site, whatever, can AI oversee that process that may be overseen by 10 people today in various shapes or form? But could AI take that and identify the end-to-end process and manage it, and say, right, I need more ingredients to deliver this or whatever, and have that.
These are agents that are basically initiating actions with other agents.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's where the world is going now. There is a lot of.
That's not that far away, though, is it?
No,
Skelts?
the technology's getting there. I wouldn't say, but the challenges businesses have got today is foundation. Is the data in the right shape and form? Have we got the right governance and control around this? What data is going to leak into this thing? What last thing you want is all this technology making the wrong decisions, because that could also be detrimental. So it's
Are you talking about feeding the LLMs, or are you just talking about how the data plumbing of a business?
Quite often, businesses today are in that data plumbing piece. Too disparate, too disconnected, don't have it completely joined together, don't understand what data sits in there, and who owns that data, and all those types of just basic challenges, which is where I believe a lot of the industry is today. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some businesses that are much more advanced and have tackled with some of this stuff, typically a smaller organisation, but where boatload of businesses are today is in that plumbing piece. How do I connect all this together so I can feed the machine, feed the AI, because it only is as good as the data that's being served.
Well, we bought a Datis for that reason when we were at TTEC, and you know, I'm still involved in the world of M&A, and businesses all like to basically show their data credentials and want data credibility. The cynic in me says that, you know, if I go back to my Sequent days, which is 26, 27 years ago, they were talking about data warehouses back then and data mining and data reservoirs. Yeah. You know, is this a problem we'll never fix?
I think the technology available to us has been holding us back. So I think, it's been, the concepts are not new. None of this concept is conceptually new, but I think what's happened is the technology that you've been required to fix some of these problems has been out the reach of the masses. It's been too expensive, too complex, and too specialist. Yeah. And I think what you look at, likes of Snowflake, Microsoft, Databricks, what they've done is they've commoditized that data management element and have allowed all of that plumbing to be much more cost effective for businesses. That's what's making that reality now. So I think you're right. I think it's been around for a long, long time, but I think because of the technology advancements we've made, those data lakes and single source of the truth in terms of data is now achievable for a lot more businesses.
It feels like it's painting the Forth Road Bridge, isn't it? You never stop. And that's why, frankly, it's a great business to be in, because they go on and on and on. The world's never really complete, is it?
That's the beauty of the technology sector. It's never done. It reinvents itself. It used to be every 2 years, I say. Now it's probably every 6 months it's reinvented. So which I think AI, back to your point, is a massive opportunity for everyone out there. Where it goes and how far it goes, we just don't know at this point. And I think this is where businesses are now starting to grapple with this topic.
I'm never afraid of, and if I look back over my career, technology has been disruptive. It's removed jobs. I'm not talking about within the industry. I'm talking about the industries it's been used in, but it's generated so many more jobs. So that's my optimism about it, is that it will remove jobs. It will fundamentally impact some jobs, but it will create, in 10 years' time, there'll be job titles and job roles that probably don't even exist. Yeah. You sit on a plane now and London to Frankfurt and basically say, "Hey, stand up! Who's in IT?
Yeah.
You know, who's going to Frankfurt or coming to London or going to Madrid because of IT?" And probably half the plane would stand up, certainly in business class.
Yeah.
You know, go back 30 years, nobody would have done.
No.
So I remain an optimist. I do think there's certain professions though that and certain roles that I think are going to get changed. I mean, if I look at the role of the GP, for example, that is fundamentally changing. If the GP is that first point of contact to do some, well, certainly the admin side will change, but that sort of first stage diagnosis, that will fundamentally change because I'm not sure you need a GP. So apologies to GPs out there, but my sense is the GPs are going to get more specialists because they'll have to do that. Ditto, frankly, low-level legal work.
Yeah,
fundamentally going to change.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like contractual reviews in legal sector, I mean, there's no reason why AI can't automate a lot of that. So I think you're right. I think roles won't get replaced. They will get an evolution will happen, and people will need to reskill and change their roles. But AI will be disruptive. I think that's just something we just got to tackle.
My sense is that human interaction will become even more important. I mean, I'm sure at some stage, maybe it'll be robots talking to robots, and but I think certainly for the next few years that human interaction's going to become very, very important. So those, we could talk about what skills should we advise the younger generation to acquire, and you got the technical skills that you talk about, like yes, very important. But I'd say some of those communication skills and that EQ and those customer engagement skills, I don't think they're gonna go away. I think they're going to be even more demand.
I think it's human nature to want that type of interaction. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you talk to ChatGPT now, it's incredible the natural language you can talk to it. It does feel
phenomenal,
like you're talking to a human in some aspects, but there's this underlying thing in the back of my brain knowing that I'm talking to a machine, and it's not right, and I want that interaction. But it's like when we sit down and talk, you get a kick out of body language or making you smile, or you just don't get that interaction from a machine.
You should say that on ChatGPT. So I'm big into this thing called the Enneagram, right, which is a psychometric tool, and please, those aficionados on the Enneagram, please reach out to me because it's helped me understand myself better. So ChatGPT is great for it. So I keyed into ChatGPT my Enneagram characteristics.
Yep.
I keyed in my wife's characteristics. Now there are loads of textbooks on it, but I ended up having this interaction with ChatGPT, and I tell you, after about 2 or 3 questions, I thought I was talking to a counsellor. It was that good.
Yeah.
And there was humour. They were advising me how to base, because my wife and I are very, very different. And it was sort of like, we've been married 41 years. I mean, and I don't understand how we've been married 41 years because we're so different Enneagram types. Yeah. And ChatGPT, it was honestly, by the way, got a very happy marriage. Don't want rumours to start. But it was just remarkable. Now, you take it from text skills and let's say voice recognition, which I think is one of the next AI frontiers. Yeah. So I'm not now keying into ChatGPT. I'm talking. It will feel very much like I'm talking to somebody. And
that's here today. I mean, yeah.
And if they get an avatar where they, it looks exactly like Mark Skelton, and it's exciting, isn't it? But it's scary.
And it's limitless. I mean, I don't know if I should share this, but one of the things I have done is get my daughter to talk to ChatGPT, and because it's limitless in the way she interacts with it, and she's not got the same concepts as we do, she can have a conversation about, ask it to create me a story about unicorns and rainbows and things like that, and it will just respond like a human would, and it's incredible to watch, but it's also quite scary. And this is one of the challenges we've got going forward. Is that the interaction norm going forward?
Well, I think we haven't talked about the impacts of that on education and syllabuses, and I think they're so far out of date. It's ridiculous. And can the educational establishment, whether it be secondary through to further education, universities, I mean, it turns the whole thing on its head.
Talk about disruption. This is huge,
and I'm not sure the educational establishment will be savvy enough or agile enough to adapt quickly enough to that world. I was never the greatest speller in the world. It doesn't matter a damn anymore, arguably. So all those people that are, it's all about spelling. Well, yeah, great if you can spell, but it's not a big deal anymore in the world we're going to, is it?
No, you just have to know how to construct the right questions, and everything is at your fingertips now. You've got a wealth of knowledge. I always think about that sort of Matrix concept. If you ever watch that film, then they plug things into your back of your head, and you instantly know everything about a topic. That's effectively what the LLMs are now providing for us.
So the definition of intelligence changes, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
I think we've had a very narrow definition of intelligence during my lifetime, and probably through the history of humankind. But I think the definition of what intelligence you need to be successful and fulfilled in life is changing because of AI.
Massively. Yeah, massively.
Oh,
deep topic.
Blooming heck, Shelts. This is deep stuff. But it is. It's really exciting. We've been gassing now for almost an hour, so we should probably bring things to a close.
Yeah.
So all right. So I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot. What in your lifetime, which is shorter than mine, has been the biggest technology impact, would you say?
I've seen in my short career compared to some of the...
In life rather than in the tech industry, what impact on our life?
Life, it's the mobile technology. I think that is the biggest game changer. When I look at, when I first started... you were very privileged to have a BlackBerry or a pager, right? That was your interaction with work outside of the office, right? That was...
They were introduced in the latter parts of my career.
Yeah, so maybe. But that was the kind of where it started. Now you're plumbed into this, the technology world. You've always got technology at your fingertips, your information at your fingertips. You're never disconnected from it, whether it's a smartwatch or a phone. I think that's the biggest evolution in my career, or certainly what I've seen.
But that's been facilitated by underlying technology. Obviously, Moore's law, basic, and then bandwidth, and then obviously the arrival of the internet. All those, all those technology trends come in.
The smartphone, yeah.
Do you know what I think's? Just reflecting on it myself, one of the big changes I think has been money. If I think about when I started off, I'm too young to remember when the first credit card came along. But if I go back to the start of my career, it was notes and coins. Now, the physical nature of money is so dramatically different. It's on a phone now.
Yeah,
and if you start using your credit card, you're sort of old fashioned. So what is money? Money's just numbers, but where are those numbers? They're just on
an app
somewhere. And they're in a data center somewhere. And I think so. So what? Well, I just think the psychological impact of that is really interesting. If we make transactions now for sort of assuming you're not down at heel and you got a reasonable income. 50 quid, 100 quid, 500 quid.
Yeah.
If you had to hand those over as notes in a suitcase, it would feel very, very different.
There's much more conscious buying decision making going on if it's physical. It
trivializes money, and it sort of trivializes money, and but money has just changed so much, and
huge shift.
But I think the great thing, talking technology is I think it's been a massive benefit. I mean, I feel I've been in an industry, Skelts, that has been a massive benefit to humankind. And, you know, I'm a big fan of this podcast called The Rest is History, which, but if you sort of took, you know, what changed from 1500 to 1600 in terms of technological advances, there were a few, or in the lifespan of a person back then, 18th century, even 19th. Look at what's changed in my lifespan and will change in yours. It's just phenomenal.
Oh, that's what I mean. The rate of change is only getting faster and faster, which is...
So it's very hard to predict what the world's going to look like in 100 years' time, isn't it?
I don't think you can. I honestly don't think...
You probably could a few hundred years ago because it wasn't going to change an awful lot.
Yeah, I think you can make some very, very high-level kind of judgment views, but I think no one knows the future. And it's out of our hands.
Quickly, isn't it? It is quite phenomenal.
But personally, what roots me is that makes it exciting. Yeah, it's that not knowing. I think we're going to be pushed left, right, and centre. So what makes it exciting to be in the tech industry? What makes it exciting to be a CTO fundamentally?
Makes it blooming hard for a company, which is why you have to say, you know, you look at a Microsoft and say, take a bow. It's very hard for a company to be the leader in successive waves as they come and go. And I agree with you. It's the change, it's the dynamism of this industry that's always stimulated me.
Agreed.
Right, I think we've come to the end.
Yeah. It's been wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
It's been really, really interesting.
I've enjoyed
it. We could chat for ages, but I think people would stop listening. People will stop listening. Good luck in your future career.
Thank you, Martin. Much appreciated.
Very well done.
That's been great fun.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.